Welcome back to Built to Ship, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with founders and product leaders shipping real AI products into the world. Today, I'm joined by Mikul, CEO and founder of Wagyu. Wagyu is the AI operating system for lending teams designed to turn what used to be hours of underwriting into just minutes. Mikul, it's great to have you on.
Tyler, thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Well, let's start with the founding story. Where did Wagyu begin and what were you doing before this? Where'd you get the idea?
Yeah, like right before, actually, I've worked on like seven different companies at this point. I'm only 20, so I've gotten a lot of industry experience from like startups and like
Wow.
big kind of tech. Did a lot of robotics, did like the patented air cleaning robot. So I had like that technical like kind of background that I like always stuck with me, and I've always wanted to like be a CEO of a company. So like, okay, you know what? Why not put it together? So this like past like summer, I lived at my friend's house in Long Island, and all we did was we built products and like shipped them the entire summer. So I did obviously I just like said no to all the internships. I was like, you know what, I just got to build and ship products. Exactly like what we're kind of talking about here, right? So that's kind of how the journey of like me building products kind of started. Started before a couple of years before that, but then it really started off this summer. And along with one of my co-founders, Sema, and also my younger brother, also co-founder Vinny, we are building this product called Wagyu together. It started off with a desktop assistant, then a voice assistant, trying to solve our own problems. Then we kind of came across lending, which is like kind of pretty random, right, for like a 20-year-old to come across. But my brother and I have still like private equity experience. I was sort of interested in the finance space. Try to like talk to over 100 different financial professionals, and somehow ended up in lending. Found out the problem that you mentioned was like like hours and hours of manual work that it could be automated with AI. And that's kind of how the product started. It was like a lot of just experimentation. It took us like months and months to kind of get where we are. Building the product is not the hard part. It's coming out with the idea and then making sure that the product actually works with the customer. So that's kind of like the journey that we took to get to this point now.
Amazing. I love it. It sounds like you kind of built your own hacker house there that you spent the summer
Pretty
building
much,
and shipping
yeah.
ideas. It's great to have an environment where you have other people who are also building around you. And it sounds like you kind of came to the idea of Wagyu not because, I mean, maybe at first it was a personal problem, but focusing on lending, it sounds like you were just talking to users and customers. What are the kinds of businesses that have this problem or that you're focusing on today?
Yeah, so this problem is actually like pretty widespread, I would say. So it's not just limited to what we're currently targeting, which is like non-bank, like mid-market lenders for that do commercial lending. Obviously, the goal is to target all lenders, so including banks later on. But people in insurance have a lot of underwriting to do. People in private equity, where we came from, there's a lot of like analyst work that they have to do. Even like legal and stuff. There's a lot of like things that could be automated that have like a lot of documents, a lot of important information that needs to be parsed down and analyzed to come to like a smaller conclusion is basically what we're trying to do, and then underwrite, figure out the risks involved. So that process exists. Like it's a huge industry, and we're just only starting with like basically non-bank lenders, which is like a small portion of it. So it's like pretty big problem, I would say.
Awesome. And who are the people within these businesses that you're finding have the pain the strongest? Who are the first adopters? And do you find any friction from any folks in the business who are maybe like doing this task, even though it's manual and boring? Do you have any resistance that you have to push back on?
Yeah, I would say the biggest resistance across almost anything financial, and then from what we've talked to, is basically like like security and compliance. They have a lot of security and compliance things they have to deal with. Already, like obviously they use cloud products, but then AI to them is like obviously technically they can use their data to train, right? Like if you use like ChatGPT personal, there's a chance your data is like used to train unless you specifically say no. Obviously, enterprise is different; they're very careful about that. But like building that trust is the biggest like pain point in terms of building, like letting them like use your AI, and then also like, is it accurate? Before, I would like maybe I would say like 6 months ago, a year ago, like, oh, it may not be accurate, but now AI has gotten so good that it's probably better than a human at this point. And we like the product users are pretty much anywhere from the actual like CEOs, people that run the company, to like the underwriters that actually were not jobs we're replacing, but basically like aiding currently. So they only need less underwriters to do way more work. So the users are pretty much like everyone, because you can kind of see all the deals that's happening as well as add more deals to it. So it's a pretty like full spectrum, but yeah, security is always like the biggest thing that we have to kind of get past in order for them to start using it.
Makes sense, yeah. And you mentioned a few different ways that someone might use, Wagyu to save them time. There's like document processing and other things. Is there like one use case that you're focusing on, early on in your go to market, or is it pretty broad? What are you seeing as the trends of what
Yeah,
people
so
really
I
need to
think
automate?
yeah, yeah. I think the start would be, just focusing on just like the underwriting portion. So this comes in, I'll say two pieces. One is when you have a deal that comes in, you have to see, oh, is that deal even worth taking? Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's very hard, and you have to spend those 4 hours to figure out if that deal is worth taking. But then it'll become later on, then sometimes you might throw away that deal after because now you analyze it and you're like, oh, it's not worth it. So you lose a lot of time there and you inevitably lose money because sometimes you don't have time to look at every single deal that comes in. So that's number one. That's what we're focusing on now. Number two would be the underwriting piece of actually how much, what's the risk? How much can a lender actually like give out considering like their portfolio and all those other factors that could contribute to how much what the risk involved and how much you want to lend to a specific company. And later on, we also want to automate like back office where with but like they have like 500 emails a day. They want to use voice to get through their emails and other things. That's later on, but yeah, these like what pieces number one and two is what we're starting with now.
Very fascinating. Well, let's get into a bit of the technical components of how you're building the AI features in your product. Do you guys use a framework like LangChain or something like that? Do you have specific models you use? Do you have an army of agents, or do you find that like one agent does a task well? You just need to give it a lot of tools. Give us a sense of like the landscape or the high level architecture of the AI systems.
Yeah, this is like the fun part as like a technical background. But yeah, on a high level, we do use LangChain. We also Vercel's like AI SDK to help manage the models. And before getting into the specifics, we've tried a lot of them. Currently we're using, I forget exactly, my CTO is the one that kind of chooses the models now, but it's basically using Cerebras and one of the really quick fast models. Reason for this is not for the accuracy, but because internally we want to test really fast. It takes there's a noticeable time difference when you have something that's on high inference that's running on Cerebras versus like a Claude model, let's say like Opus or Sonnet. So we're using that right now, even in production, mainly just for speed and trying to iterate as much as possible on like the AI system itself. But the goal is end up switching it to like a Claude, probably a Sonnet model, to keep the higher context windows. And yeah, we're using LangChain, and it's just a sequence. It's just like a set of agents. I like to think of agents as like things like Claude and Cursor that are very like non-deterministic, as they can take a bunch of actions to get through different outputs. I like to say that this is more deterministic. Is like we have depending on like the number of documents, we have anywhere from like 4 to 6 agents that all task very specific things, and they're very deterministic. Is like they're only one like end state pretty much, and then the tools they have access to are pretty much very limited. It's very analytical of information you're given, and maybe some web searches and maybe some like financial analysis like tools as well. So we have things that analyze just the company, just the documents, just the financials, just like the borrowing risk, things like that, that are very deterministic. That honestly, it just comes down to proper context and proper like tool access to just like a very limited amount of tools. And reason for this is we have a big portion is like focusing on parsing the documents that come in, and then the next portion is in how do we create an output. And those intermediate steps is why we have separate agents. We want to be hyper specific with their accuracy, because no, like any like mistake here can be costly, and like costly as in they could cost like hundreds of $1,000s. So you want to be really careful here. So hence do multiple agents. At the end, they come down to like one final agent once all the information gets parsed in, and then we kind of create a document at the end. So that process usually takes a few minutes to run, which is not that bad considering how much documents and how much information is being passed in. But yeah, that's the whole entire system.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I think a key takeaway from what you shared is, a lot of people talk about agents, but to your point, there's certain use cases like in underwriting and lending where determinism is really important. And so by breaking this up into steps that are less free form, it sounds like you put more guardrails and control around what's happening. I wanted to ask, what's the actual interface for the user, right? Like you have this complex like multi-step AI system behind the scenes, but is the user chatting with a bot? Are they just clicking a button and they don't even necessarily know there's AI behind the scenes? What do they interact with?
Yeah, the goal for us is, I think, really important these days now is just abstracting away the UI and the UX. Chats, I think, are still, it's like the mainframe of a computer, let's say, right? I think that there's still ways to wait for us to figure that out. The way we do it is abstract 90, right now 100% of it is abstracted away. You kind of upload your documents as if in your, let's say you have like any other like lending platform, just upload your documents. But the difference is you get your final underwritten output within like 5 minutes versus now someone would have manually would have to like do that and upload that, right? So we have it completely behind the scenes. I think there's going to be more things we're going to start bringing forward as well. Like I think we're likely going to bring like a Q&A bot. So this will likely use like a RAG system to then do that. But right now it's completely abstracted away. We have risk analysis, and then yeah, I think we'll probably bring someone forward. But it's really nice to have it really like they're not technical at all, right? So
Yeah,
makes it really
makes
easy.
sense. So sometimes the best interface is just a button and doesn't have to be a chat back and forth. On
Exactly.
the note of that Q&A bot, I'm curious, how do you think about build versus buy? There's tons of solutions out there that you could just plug in, like, you know, connect it to your own data. They probably let you upload information to a Q&A bot. Do you think you'll, I know it's probably early, but do you think you'll roll your own, or do you think you'll buy something off the shelf? How do you think about that when it comes to building a company?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's something that I think anyone should like obviously think about. I think that I'm personally very cheap in the sense that I think I would likely try to build it myself. I think there's also value in that. You have more control, and also like learning. I think it's especially young. I think I also would like to learn, or like my team would also want to learn as well. And to be honest, it's probably going to be a hybrid. I think they might be using like a system just for RAG, but then because there's going to be like it's only a few documents. It's not like there's huge amounts. There's even a possibility we can dump everything into context. We kind of have to figure that out. But I think we'll likely build something on our own since I think RAG nowadays there's probably like there's like already frameworks that makes it really easy. And it's likely at the root. But then obviously if something just blows us out of the water, like why not use that, right? It's just optimizing, and I think it's like trial and error. And, like use the trial period to figure out what's good and what's not. I think that's what we're gonna do to figure out what's the best move.
Makes sense. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, it sounds like you guys have the system in production. A lot of companies are now finally getting, AI systems into production. They've been talking about doing it. They've been marketing it. Even big companies with large teams have taken a while. But I'd say that we've seen a trend this year of, again, it's a lot less companies than you'd think or than are claiming, but a lot more people have things in production. How are you thinking about, do you already have systems set up, or are you trying to figure this out? How to monitor like how the system's working? Do you have checkpoints at every step? Are there any parts of your AI that are kind of like non-deterministic? And then you need to kind of measure and monitor, make sure it's doing the right thing there. How do you actually track in production?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'll be completely transparent. Right now, it's kind of just exists, and it kind of just does its thing. But we're working towards like building in a few different stuff. I think right before production, I think evals is very important. Kind of to what the point of you mentioned of like, oh, is there some non-determinism? And basically, how we do like online web searches, see what's publicly available. There's going to be non-determinism even if in the document. Sometimes the AI can just miss it. So we need to create evals like to test the prompts, to test the entire architecture. That's something that's a work in progress. We're actively working on that now. We're likely just gonna continue just build it in house. To like your second point of like in production, there's like checkpoints in what the user can see. Like they'll see like, oh, it's going through like 5 different steps. They don't know that it's AI, but they know there's 5 different steps are magically happening somehow. And there'll be checkpoints saved in the back. And then for us, I think we're gonna have to add kind of like explore what options are available, but kind of like monitoring kind of like risk, and also just having logs, and probably have an AI go through those logs or something. I'm sure there's definitely products out there that kind of do that. And if anything goes wrong, then it flags us. Same thing with basically bugs, because this could be something like crashes, especially when we like to ship like a little bit on the when it's like beta rather than when it's full production, because we learn way more when it's in production when it's in pre-prod. So that could be a really useful kind of thing for us, and we're still kind of figuring that out, to be honest. So if there's any suggestions from other people, like we'll love to take them, but I think we'll slowly figure that out.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think one thing we all have to keep in mind, and it's great to be part of like this community that's building, is that like there's a new solution every day. There's no one right answer. To your point, it depends on your workflow. If your users are used to just uploading a document, that's the right interface. Even if other people are, building, interactive chats, etc. So it's great to hear that this is something you guys are thinking about and building internally. What's one thing that surprised you that LLMs do well, and one thing that you've had a challenge with having them do? And have you either like decided we just won't use an LLM for that anymore, or have you found a workaround that you think, oh, we just needed to change this in the prompt, etc.?
That's a very good question. I think there's a couple of things. I think with the extended context window, I'm surprised that we're able to like we don't have to use a RAG or intelligence system with documents. documents are limited as of now, limited enough that we can just dump everything in. So once we extract all the text, and it makes it a lot easier to handle context, especially with separated agents when it's not trying to do multiple things. It's very accurate in that sense. One thing that's not great is numbers. And if you still try now, try to have it count something, it can't really do that, right? So that's the one thing when everything is numbers dependent. So we kind of have a system of like, in a way you can call like checks that will then validate the numbers manually that comes in. So let's say, for example, we're calculating financials and we know the formula that needs to be used. The AI is usually like right, but sometimes it could be wrong. And when you have that some kind of check to make sure that it is correct. So these are some stuff that we define, and it kind of varies from client to client. And that's why there's some manual work in like onboarding anyone, because of we need to make sure that the numbers and what they are looking for in their documents are very different. So we kind of adjust for that. But so we're kind of building those kind of systems that check everything that comes in, and it makes it a lot easier, a lot more accurate, and basically more trust in. We can trust it when we give it out to people, and now, and they can also trust it, knowing that everything's being validated.
No, that's great. I think, you need a hybrid system. It's not enough to just have an LLM going at it on its own. When it comes to those checks, is that a human in the loop? Are there Python functions you've written to like do some math to check it? Like, what do those actually look like in practice, so other people can get ideas about how do they put guardrails and checks into their AI systems?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's definitely it's all in Python. Right now, we were thinking of having like an automate, like a human in the loop kind of system that validates on the steps, kind of like more like an early beta. I think that's something that we are still considering. We're leaning towards not, because I think we want to reduce their like a user's like time, and we especially early on kind of get them hooked on. So we're leaning against it, but that's something that we're considering. Yeah, everything's done in Python, fully automated. We do have a thing that I think might be useful for people, is there's like a confidence score where how well the AI I think it did based on the information that it's supposed to get to versus how the information that it was able to get. And then sometimes you can see the confidence ranges. And we noticed that sometimes that when we have less documents and it needs to fill out, let's say 10 fields, and 8 of those fields information is just missing, the confidence goes way lower. So that's another way for a human to kind of see, oh, the AI wasn't that confident in what the information that it gave was. But then we'll able to like figure out why. I think we have to add more like context on that information. I think giving the user more information is not a bad thing, especially early on. So working on that. But yeah, everything is validated via Python, fully automated, like end-to-end system. Trying to make it as easy as possible for a user.
I like that confidence score idea. Is that something where the LLM that's filling out the information you ask in the same prompt to also give a confidence, or do you have a separate LLM that reviews the situation and gives a confidence? How do you actually like tactically do that?
Yeah, I think we currently just have the LLMs like give us confidence score, and then across all the agents we like average it out. And that's kind of how we do it. I think there is validity in creating that second system where it checks everything all over again, which actually could be very useful. There's also an avenue we're exploring. We have 3 different LLMs, all do it at the same time, average it out or pick the best result. That's also a thing. I think even Cursor is trying to like build that out too. So there's something we're exploring. That's obviously going to cost us more, but if it's worth it in the long run, it's definitely worth it. So yeah, there's obviously ways to kind of do that checks, but right now it's just each LLM just gives its own confidence. Then it's like me writing like my homework assignment, like, oh, I was only like 50% sure, rather than be like giving to the teacher. And I was like, oh, this looks right. It's probably 80%. I think that gives the different values when someone else is looking at it.
Very, very interesting. Thanks for those insights. Well, before we wrap up, I want to put your website up on the screen, wagyu.ai. Share a little bit with the audience, like who's your target customer, who would be interested in using Wagyu, how should they get in contact? Yeah.
Yeah, so why is Wagyu in its current form? It's built for like lenders, any non-bank lender. Honestly, we're open to chat with anyone that has lending issues. Right now we're kind of abstracted away our like information, so it looks a little empty there. But any lender, or even from private equity or something that needs a lot of document processing, document analysis, free to chat. But our current, like, let's say ICP is going to be like any non-bank lender that does commercial lendings that have that higher basically a higher fund that they kind of lend out of. Best way to get in contact is my email is mccool@wagyu.ai. You can also book a demo via the link on our website, and we also have a support email at the bottom there. If you're also interested in just like trying out what a voice agent could look like, there's like the little button at the top that says voice agent assistant has moved. So this will basically connect to your email and calendar. You can basically talk to your email and calendar, kind of get through the entire inbox, like in the car or something like that, just fully autonomously. So this is something we built earlier. We'll bring it back into our system later on, but this is fully functional. If you log into our website and connect your Gmail account or Microsoft account, you can use as well. So a few things, but currently focusing on the lending. So if there's any issues with this as well, feel free to reach out to that support email. We'll get back to you ASAP.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see you kind of merge those two together and to follow along as you guys expand, through the non-bank lending, and I assume eventually to banks as well. Well,
Yep.
cool. It's great having you on. Thanks so much for sharing so many details and like insights that are actually tactical and useful for people who are building AI systems. I hope everyone checks out the website and gets in contact if they're experiencing the pain you're solving. And looking forward to following along and chatting again soon. Thanks for coming on. Awesome. We'll talk to you next time. Bye now.